I understood at once that I wasn't the son-in-law my in-laws had imagined for their ideal, sensitive daughter. My wife, Monica, had always been the focal point of their world, their little princess. To them, I was just a man who had invaded their space, knocking her off the pedestal they had placed her on since infancy. They never explicitly stated it, but their actions screamed louder than words. No matter how hard I worked, how much I gave, or how much love I put into our marriage, at best they tolerated me. At worst, they absolutely disregarded me, as though having me in their lives was a necessary evil they had to put up with for Monica's sake. If I wanted something, I had to ask for it, but Monica got it without question. The odds were never in my favor, but I convinced myself that it didn't matter. The marriage was about Monica and me, not her parents. I believed that when they finally saw me for who I was, saw how much I loved her, things would improve. But they didn't. The warning signs had been there from the start. The disapproving looks during family dinners, the way her mother, Patricia, would sigh each time I spoke, the condescending, vacuous smile from her father, Gerald, as he patted my shoulder as if to say, "You'll never be enough." They spoke to Monica, ignoring me completely, as though I didn't even exist. It wasn't just the little things, though. There were glaring moments, like when they planned a family trip and conveniently forgot to invite me, or when Monica's mother redecorated our house without my input, as if my opinion didn't matter. Gerald once flatly dismissed my career, saying I lacked ambition. And Monica? She never spoke up for me. I don't know if it was fear, indifference, or something worse, that she secretly agreed with them. That, more than anything, cut the deepest. But I persevered. I loved my wife. I told myself that if I waited long enough, they would see I was worthy of their daughter. But love isn't always enough. Everything fell apart one night. I came home exhausted from work, already looking forward to the small comforts. A hot shower, a peaceful meal, maybe even a quiet evening. But as soon as I stepped inside, I knew something was off. The air was heavy, the lights were dim, and the house was unnervingly quiet. Monica wasn't on the couch reading, as she usually was. My heart pounded as I heard murmurs from the living room. Stepping inside, I saw Monica sitting stiffly on the couch, arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her parents stood nearby, their faces cold and expectant. They weren't just visiting. They were waiting for me. I placed my keys on the table and shut the door behind me, keeping my voice even. "What's going on?" Patricia and Gerald exchanged a look. Then Monica spoke, her voice distant. "We need to talk. Simple words, yet so final." Her father stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Then, in a voice that sounded rehearsed, he said, "You're not a good match for Monica." I blinked, trying to process what I had just heard. It felt like a punch to the gut. Gerald's voice was firm, practiced. "We've put up with this marriage long enough, but Monica clearly deserves better. You hold her back." My fingers curled into fists at my sides. I turned to Monica, searching her face, hoping, praying she would refute their words. Instead, she met my gaze and said, "No one wants you here." It felt like the air had been knocked from my lungs. For a moment, I believed I had misheard. That my wife couldn't say something so cruel. But when Gerald and Patricia nodded in agreement, I realized the truth. I had never truly been a part of their family. I turned to Monica one last time. "Is this what you want?" For a brief second, something flickered in her eyes. Guilt, maybe? But then she nodded. That was it. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I simply turned on my heel and walked upstairs. The framed photos on the hallway walls seemed to mock me. Images of a man who once believed in love, in loyalty, in fighting for a marriage. But I had been a fool. I packed quickly, methodically. Clothes, shoes, personal belongings, everything that was mine. I wasn't going to leave a single trace of myself in that house. By the time I came back downstairs, my hands were shaking, my vision blurred. But I refused to cry in front of them. They just stood there watching. Patricia and Monica silent, Gerald scrolling through his phone like he had more important things to do. I gave Monica one last look. I needed her to say something. Anything. But she simply turned away. So I left. The night air was cold as I tossed my suitcase into the back seat of my car. My grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles white. I sat there for a long time, staring at the house that had never felt like home. Then, without a second thought, I started the engine and drove away. I don't remember the streets I passed or the traffic lights. It was all a blur. Eventually, I found myself in front of a budget motel. I checked in without thinking about the cost. The room was small, dimly lit, and the bed creaked under my weight. But for the first time in years, I felt relief. No more proving myself. No more walking on eggshells. No more Monica. And that night, I had the best sleep of my life. I kept them waiting that long, and by the time I did reply, my mom's SMS had reached New York in desperation. "Monica, please just respond to me." "Patricia, he's actually in jail. We need money for bail, Monica." Well, that was money, but it wasn't really about me. They only required a wallet, so they never asked for me back. I grinned as I eventually typed out a response. It wasn't my problem, and it arrived right away. "Are you serious, Monica? Really, Monica? This is my dad, and we're discussing you because you're my—" That last one nearly made me chuckle. "Spouse, you can't just leave." I felt I wasn't suitable for their ideal little family when I was the unwanted one, but now, all of a sudden, since their world was falling apart, I was supposed to be the devoted spouse. I let the phone ring a few more times before I eventually picked it up. In a calm voice, I said, "What do you want?" At last, Monica exhaled after a quick intake from the other end. Her voice was full of fury, but I continued. "We need to talk. I'm listening." I was not the least bit interested. "You should come home," she remarked. I sneered. "No, I really don't." She let out a sharp exhale. "Stop behaving like a child. My father was detained, and we must get him out," I mockingly reiterated. "Last time I checked, I wasn't involved. You and your parents wanted nothing to do with me anymore." Then she lowered her voice. "Please, this is serious." I had never heard Monica utter please, and I nearly felt sorry for her. Even though I already knew the answer, I asked, "What exactly do you need from me?" After a moment of hesitation, she responded, "Money for bail." "Bingo," I said draggingly. "So this wasn't about me, it was about what I could provide," she snapped. "This is family." I smiled. Funny, because when she told me 2 days ago that no one wanted me around, I wasn't family then. She didn't argue. There wasn't anything to argue about. She tried again. "My father is in serious trouble." I cut her off. "Maybe he'll finally learn what it's like to be helpless." Her breath caught. "You don't mean that," I smirked. "I absolutely do." "I can't believe you're doing this," she said with an angry moan. I twisted the knife. "Figure it out without me. As you always wanted." She could barely say anything else before I ended the call. I looked at my phone for a while, seeing more texts roll in. Patricia was pleading. Gerald was silent. Most likely because he didn't have access to a phone while incarcerated. I could have helped them. I could have sent the bail money and gone back to being the puppet they always thought I would be. But I was no longer that man. They had already made their bed. Now? They could lie in it. Monica called 7 more times. Each one went unanswered. Patricia, her mother, had sent an alarming number of text messages. Gerald, the man who never respected me, the man who looked down on me, finally broke his silence. He sent me a message, treating me like a stray dog. "Gerald, We don't have time for your immature outburst. Act like a man and support your family. I laughed. This was the same man who had disparaged me for years. The same man who, 2 days ago, told me I wasn't good enough. And now he expected me to intervene and save him. I put my phone down and went about my day. I took my time. I took a long, leisurely break, as if he was doing me a favor by allowing me to assist. Sitting by the motel window, coffee in hand, I ordered room service. I watched the time pass, as if my in-laws' whole world wasn't collapsing. It wasn't until late afternoon that I finally made a move. I got in my car and drove. But not directly to their house. I made them wait. I took several detours, stopped at a gas station, bought a bottle of water, took my sweet time. By the time I finally turned into their driveway, the smug superiority was gone. The energy had changed. Gerald was pacing outside, his desperation evident, his hands clenched into fists. Patricia sat on the porch steps, clutching her phone like a lifeline, and Monica. She stood there with her arms crossed, trying to look composed. As soon as I stepped out of the car, all three of them turned to me. Gerald snapped. "Where the hell have you been?" I smirked. "Not here, like you wanted." His jaw ticked, but he had no power over me. Patricia rushed forward. "You know why we called you. This isn't a game." I nodded nonchalantly and closed my car door. "I know." Monica stepped closer, her voice quieter, almost begging. "We need you." I folded my arms. "You need me?" I let the silence stretch, let them squirm. Then I spoke. "You told me I wasn't welcome. You let your father mock me. Your mother treats me like an outsider, but now that Gerald's in trouble, suddenly I matter." Monica swallowed hard. Gerald stepped forward. "This is about family," I laughed. "Oh, now it's about family? That's funny, because 2 nights ago I was just a burden." Gerald's face darkened. Before he could speak, Patricia interrupted. "We'll pay you back as soon as possible." I raised an eyebrow at Monica. "And you agree?" She hesitated, then nodded. "It's my father." I let the words sink in. I had spent years breaking my back for these people, begging for a seat at a table where I was never welcome. Now they didn't want me. They only wanted my money. Sighed. "Monica." Gerald clenched his fists. I nodded. This is not my problem." Real panic flickered across Monica's face. "You can't just walk away." I tilted my head. Smirked. "Sure I can." Patricia tried again. "Please, you don't understand." I shook my head. "No, Patricia, you don't understand." I turned and walked away. Monica shouted after me. I got in my car, closed the door. And for the first time since I married into that family, I felt free. They had no power over me. I drove away without looking back. I could still hear Monica's voice, calling my name. Once, that would have stopped me cold. Not anymore. The sun was setting, the road stretched ahead, and for the first time in years, I was moving forward. Finally.